Believe it or not, some school districts are refusing to commit to teach live classes in the fall. It's time you face it, Mom and Dad. Public school just isn't into you anymore. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. All right, every week we showcase just a few of the endless stories impacting kids in schools across this nation and the world. But we do more than just talk about issues. Today, we're officially launching our 11th year of enrollment at FreedomProject Academy. FPA provides a classical education built on a Judeo-Christian value frame for kids from kindergarten all the way through high school. We actually teach students how to think, not what to think. I encourage you to request a free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com. Students can enroll full-time, take a single class, or even get your church involved and start a partnership school. Again, visit freedomforschool.com to get more information and take back control of your kids' education. Okay, today we start with teacher unions. And why do you need Freedom Project? Because here it is, April, and they're not convinced they'll be ready to teach your kids face-to-face in September. This is why we do what we do. We start with teachers' unions playing politics, as many school districts across the country refuse to say whether or not they'll return to the classroom in the fall, and this is just downright selfishness on the part of our teachers. District leaders who spoke to the Post said they were planning for a full return to school with hybrid systems as a backup in case the virus doesn't improve. Teachers' unions also continue to complicate reopening. How are they doing that, Katie?
Well, they're basically going against science is what they're doing. Again. I mean, we've talked about this over and over. For how many months? It's been over a year. Science says that it is okay for our students to be in the classroom, and already at this point, teachers have been able to get their vaccinations. I've seen them on Facebook proudly showing they've gotten shot 1 and now shot 2. So they can get vaccinated, and they're not getting COVID at any higher of a rate than any other profession anyway, who are actually on the front lines, as we call it, and are not complaining. But still, even though science says it's not, they are complaining and making demands.
Forget science. How about your own lying eyes? For the last 6 months,
common sense is gone.
We've had kids in private schools, and not one kid has died. I have not seen a single look. Because if there was some Catholic school kid who died of COVID, it would be front page news. Fauci would be there passing out double layer masks. It didn't happen. You have had private and Christian schools open for 6 months, and there has not been a single death, not a single hospitalization on the back of this. The fact is that we are to quote Governor DeSantis of Florida, vaccines are supposed to make you immune. So start living like you're immune. You got the vaccine, right? Look, Miss fifth grade teacher. Oh, I've got my vaccines, but the snot-nosed little kids might not have his. You're vaccinated, right? I'm pretty sure if a kid came to school with polio and you had your polio shot as a little girl, you wouldn't be worried about it, would you? But you're worried about this.
I recently saw like a chart that basically said like, oh, the 1800s and the 1920s, 1950s, whatever. It like listed all the different vaccines, and each time it was like 2 vaccines. And now like any kid born after like 1980, 1990, I don't know what the year is. All the vaccines, like mounds and mounds of them. And now they're going to add, eventually here, COVID will be on that list as well. But for right now, the kids don't need it because the kids aren't getting it.
And it's not something that the kids were ever going to get. Yeah, and it's not even that contagious from kids. Yes. So, but we knew all this 9 months ago. We knew this. And so obviously something else is going on with the public schools. And I'll tell you what it is. They see this as they believe public school teachers and public school teachers unions, they think COVID and the pandemic gives them a huge upper hand. They consider them, look, the real frontline workers, the ones who went to daycare every day, the ones who went to hospitals as nurses and worked, they seriously have a lot of goodwill coming towards them for what they did. But public school teachers were never frontline workers. They are non-frontline workers who want to be treated like frontline workers. They think they're heroic for not doing what all the real frontline workers did. And so consequently, they think they've got you over a barrel. They are underestimating what we talked about yesterday on the Dr. Duke Show, how many fewer kids are enrolling in public kindergarten, how homeschooling numbers have crossed 10% of the population of the United States now, which is a huge number as well.
And that's where this all comes to a head with the newest, latest, greatest demand by the teachers' unions. Of course, it's the California teachers' unions for childcare. They now want, no, I will not return to the classroom until you make it so that someone takes care of my children for me so that I can go then supposedly teach your children. Yes, free childcare, or I'm not in the classroom. That's where we're at.
Yeah, and this is a remarkable story. It fits perfectly in the first slot with our other one we shared with you. They're not going to teach your kids. Oh, and by the way, you're going to blackmail us. We're going to we want our kids to be looked after by those frontline workers in daycare, and we shouldn't have to pay for it because COVID?
Yeah, and what has happened already is that in San Diego, Sacramento, and San Jose, the unions have successfully fought for policies allowing employees to bring their kids to the classroom as they're opening up now. So, I mean, having a newborn at home, I mean, I could just strap her into her carrier and, teach my subject here, but if she starts wailing, we'll see what happens next.
It's also the double standard. They won't teach your kids, but they want to be able to bring their kids to school. Right, and then they want subsidies for this, or they want actual daycare workers hired to look after the kids.
Yep.
They won't teach your kids. Again, they won't guarantee we're going to have class in the fall, but we'll guarantee that they. And look, name another group that has because of COVID backed way off of what they ordinarily would be required to do, and yet still gets paid the same. Have they suffered at all in terms of what they were paid? No. These teachers, whether they teach or not, however poorly they teach online, whether they do it successfully or not, whether these schools open or don't open, they're still getting fully paid.
I thought of one,
Ooh.
But it's kind of professors. So it's kind of the same thing, but...
Teachers?
I don't call them teachers. I don't call them teachers. Okay, so...
We profess things. We don't actually know them.
This is true. Now... because, monkey see, monkey do in California. Now the United Teachers of Los Angeles, the LA teachers, saw what's happening, and they're asking for basically what San Jose and Sacramento and San Diego are getting. But they are also saying that the union's calling for the Los Angeles Unified to allow the educators who have young children to continue working from home until the district can provide them subsidized childcare and a proper childcare program, which, is that just basically the keys to the car they want?
And by the way,
for the teachers by the fall. So it's like threatening on top of threatening.
They want programs, they want guidelines,
subsidies,
all the things they will not do for their own school classrooms. How about this? Yes, this is a quote. Yes, we know healthcare and essential workers have faced these challenges all year. However, a competition to the bottom is not in any of our best interests, Maya Daniels, Los Angeles Unified teacher, says in an online petition calling on the school board to offer support to educator parents. Quote, we do not want anything we don't believe everyone is entitled to. Employer support for children and families. Well, what about the parents whose kids you're not teaching? What about in San Diego, just down the road there, where all those teachers that refuse to show up and teach the real American kids instead go and volunteer to teach in refugee camps, unvaccinated third world kids? This is the kind of stuff that we have to deal with everywhere. So they're not sure they're going to be able to be there for your kids in the fall, but you and your pocketbook, mom and dad, will be there for them 24/7, 365 days a year.
I know, because of COVID, we're all still stuck at home if you're in a lockdown state. So how about having a little light reading? All you have to do is take a look at the UK, where they have a 128-page paper out there called Birth to 5, Matters from the Early Years Coalition. Does it now? Well, it's been developed over the past 6 months. Or at least it took 6 months. And it's by representatives from the National Education Union, the Nurses Day Nurseries Association and the Association for Professional Development in Early Years.
Professional development. Those slackers, they're 2-year-old and they're not on LinkedIn yet.
Exactly. So once you start, like, red alert here, Mom and Dad, once you start hearing jibber jabber of associations and these groups, it's going to be bad. So here we go. The 128-page paper, light reading again, that you're going to have, includes lessons on white privilege, of course, which are needed to combat the racial prejudice within our children. The youngest of children.
Wouldn't there be a lot less racial prejudice if you stopped arguing that people were guilty of racism on the basis of the color of their skin?
You're just a racist.
Now, bigot.
This paper claimed that, quote, talking about race is a first step in countering racism. It is a mistaken assumption that treating all people in the same way and ignoring differences in race is a sufficient response to racism. And the paper stated that this approach simply allows the continuation of bias in society, which disadvantages people from Black and minoritized groups. Instead of a colorblind approach to race, more proactive anti-racism is needed.
And that means being racist, right?
To the common sense person,
exactly.
Yes, that's
to
what that means. But to them, that
yeah.
means get on board with them.
Which is join us in our racist crusade to right racist problems by becoming racist ourselves. There's even more. Quote, it's also time to challenge the widespread notion that children do not see race and are colorblind to difference. You put kids in a room together, they get along. And almost none of their arguments and disagreements have to deal with skin color. They have to deal with, you took my toy, wah, 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 right? That's all that it is.
Yeah.
Now, you're going to import this into the playpen. You're going to import this into the block room of the kindergarten for no other reason than your own adult vanity. This is really creepy stuff. According to these Brits, when adults are silent about race, children's racial prejudice and misconceptions can be maintained or reinforced. Quote, encouraging dialogue and conversation about difference can evoke children's strong sense of fairness and break down. So wait. You just got through saying that kids were bigots. You just got through saying that kids don't assume that children are colorblind, and now you turn around and call them their innate fairness. You can't have it both. Brit doublespeak. Maybe Meghan Markle does belong over there. Okay. Maybe she is the perfect person to be an English theoretician.
Well, the simple fact that they are now making it so that basically out the womb, because that's what they want. Straight out the womb, they want me to identify all the nurses in the room and the doctors and say, that one's white, oh, that one's black, so what, you're supposed to feel differently because black versus white versus black, whatever it may be. The fact that once you point this out to a child, it's like you've lost their sense of innocence or their just curiosity about life and their just natural love for everything. And like you said, it's not based on the skin color. They may notice a difference. That's okay. It's okay to notice that your skin tone is a different color than that person's skin tone. It's when they treat them differently, but they're saying you have to treat them differently. And that's the real racist approach.
Right. In other words, in order to get in front of their racism, you have to racialize them.
You have to get it in their head.
In order to get in front of what you think is going to be their racist natures, you have to racially alter them, right? You have to, and it does. It stops children from being, everything the left does stops children from being children. It's the same thing with gender. Sure, little boys in diapers have a sense that what little girls have in their diapers are different, but it's not discriminatory.
Yeah, and even something simple like that. Why is it that a 3-year-old must have all this information? It's like we're trying.
Well, they can't. A 3-year-old can't.
They can't, but they're trying to.
Yes. I mean, everything we know. This is with the science denying nature of the progressive left. You and I both know every child development agent knows that children that young can't process this information. Yeah. They can't process your adult racial attitudes. They can't do it. You're still going to beat them over the head with them, not because you're getting out in front of their racism, because you are instilling race and bigotry in them. If you're teaching kids who are too young to parse racial theory, and these kids you're teaching kids at 3 and 4 and 5 to see only race. You are the ones responsible for making them bigots, as you say yourself, right? Their natural innocence, their natural open-mindedness, you've destroyed it.
And now we turn our attention to Congress. Here back in the good old U.S. of A., where they want our kindergartners to be woke. I mean, we were talking about 3-year-olds, but they're behind the times. They only are going to the kindergarten level. So Congress has proposed the Civics Secures Democracy Act. Sounds great, doesn't it? Okay, but it's not. It would authorize $1 billion per year in federal grants, which grants don't have to be paid back, but where does that money come from? That's a different story. Over the 6-year course for K-12 curriculum development, teacher training, and research on the teaching of history and civics. Okay. Wow, that sounds like maybe it's a good thing.
Well, the tip-off is the title. We are not a democracy. We are not a democracy, number one. And so yeah, it makes it sound like
doesn't it? Unicorns and rainbows.
Yes, like the Affordable Care Act, which everybody knew was going to be expensive. So this History and Civics Act is to literally go back and create a Black Lives Matter 1619 radical critical theory for kids from kindergarten all the way through high school that deals exclusively with this critical race theory. You can imagine what that's like. Although the irony is that they're already doing this.
Yeah.
What do we need this for? It's already done.
Just to have it on the books that we officially did it.
So
now,
we're proposing to pay billions of dollars for that which has already entered the schools.
It says $1 billion.
$1 billion, but over how many years?
Oh, in federal, over 6. Well, it's going to be over 6 years.
But
whatever.
Still,
either way.
I mean, we're going to pay for something that they've already done.
That is a very good point. But this way they can go out and, what is it called? Campaign on it.
Yes.
Look what we did. This is what Congress.
And the fact that we are not a democracy tells you this is not real civics and this is not real history.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. What does this all mean otherwise? Now, you got to remember back to day one of the Biden presidency. Day one. You know, he's going to be a moderate, everyone, except on day one, his very first executive order, which there have been how many now, actually rescinded Trump's original executive order that had banned that critical race theory from being into at least the federal level for federal employees. Now we know critical race theory is everywhere in every profession. But Trump had at least made it so you couldn't have it at the federal level in our employees. But now Biden's like, oh, no, we're putting it back in. And remember, Trump had created the 1776 commission. And, of course, Biden's saying, no, that's racist. Because Trump wanted to actually educate on the civics and learn that we are a republic and not a democracy.
And Trump wanted to ban critical race theory in the military academies. Biden put it back.
Oh, yeah,
because
all of it.
Critical race theory is not equity. It is not about equality. It is about how one-sided, unidimensionally, we teach kids to hate their country, to hate their race, to hate Christianity, to blame all the world's problems on Western culture, which is a lie. That's what it does. In fact, speaking of this lie, here we've got Representative Earl Blumenauer of Oregon, who said, quote, the events of recent weeks, not the storming of the Capitol by Black Lives Matter people who burnt down the church next to the White House. No, not that. Not the burning and looting that takes place in Minneapolis, Seattle, and Portland. Not that. That's nothing to be worried about. That's healthy democracy. The only reason Blumenauer out in Oregon says we need this is because a bunch of armed right wingers attacked the Capitol building on January 6th. Didn't happen. They weren't armed. They weren't all right wingers. None of that was true.
Now, Blumenauer is a sponsor of said bill, and he's calling, as they all call it, an insurrection that happened. The worst insurrection, if you know what an insurrection actually is, the worst one probably in recent history happened on January 6th at the Capitol. They say they failed to have an uprising or a revolt, if you will. Now, Blumenauer is not the only one. Obviously, he's got sponsors. He's a Democrat. Fine, whatever. He's going to come out and say this. But we have some Republicans who are jumping on board, too, because why not? Tom Cole in Oklahoma. And John Cornyn, who's a senator from Texas.
The same clown show Republicans who gave us Common Core, right?
Which is to say pretty much all of them.
Let's not forget Lamar Alexander of Tennessee. You think about it. Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Texas. We think that those are among our most conservative states.
No.
And yet it is legislators from those states who gave us Common Core, who helped give us Common Core, who want to pass this monstrosity. Well, the ever ubiquitously useful Stanley Kurtz, who is right on top of these kind of things. Kurtz is a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. He expressed immediate concern right away, saying in the National Review that this new legislation, quote, is a backdoor effort anti-gay, backdoor effort to impose a de facto national curriculum in the politically charged subject areas of history and civics. They're going to corporatize and federalize a curriculum about our history and our civics that is entirely negative, entirely anti-American, anti-liberty, anti-freedom of speech, anti-Second Amendment. That's what they want to do. We warned you about this. Common Core was a step Trojan horse to huge federal takeovers of education. This is what they want to do. Stanley Kurtz is exactly right. He goes on to say, all around us, the culture war has broken the bounds of the university and spilled into our day-to-day lives. Conservatives and traditional liberals are rightly up in arms about the woke assault on our most fundamental freedoms, extending into inculcating guilt and shame in elementary school kids for the color of their skin. Gullivers Travels Week on the Dr. Duke Show continues. We talked yesterday about how wonderful that book is, Gullivers Travels, and what a shame it is that nobody reads it anymore. And they don't read it because it was written by a white guy and a Christian. It was written in the 18th century, and the language and the sentences are long and confusing. And so let's not do it anymore. And yet, when you do that, you are taking away from kids this beautiful, the book is a beautiful observation, again, on perspective. As Gulliver travels the world, and it discovers and finds civilization and groups of people that no one had ever discovered before, contrasting his life as a Westerner, as a product of Western culture, to what he finds in these other countries, really sheds an incredibly bright spotlight on what we are and what we ought to be. To take that sense away from kids by not letting them read this book is tragic. Take a look at this particular quote from Gulliver's Travels, and you'll get a sense about how broad-minded and how modern the book is. He's talking about judges and talking about how judges who are corrupt judges pervert the law. Justices and judges aren't about justice if they are not above board. And what he says here is really powerful. Judges, he says, are picked out from the most dexterous lawyers. Let that sink in. What do you think the judiciary is going to be like when it's lawyers themselves that end up judges? We all make lawyer jokes. Everybody's made lawyer jokes for 1,000 years. Remember what Shakespeare said? Let's kill all the lawyers. Kill them tonight, right? If there's a profession that ranks at the bottom with used car salesmen, it's always lawyers. And where do our judges come from exclusively? Where do our politicians exclusively come from now? The lawyer class. Judges are picked out from the most dexterous lawyers who are grown old or lazy, and having been biased all their lives, John Roberts, against truth or equity, they are now under such a fatal necessity of favoring fraud, perjury, and oppression that I have known several of these lawyers and judges to refuse a large bribe from the side where justice lay, rather than injure the faculty by doing anything unbecoming the nature of their office. Crime and oppression and tyranny and disproportionism, that's what gave them careers. It's also what gave rise to their lawyer tricks that made them judges and politicians. And even if you try to bribe them to do the right thing, many of these judges, Swift said, would rather ignore the bribe and keep on doing the wrong things for the good of the lawyerly fraternity.
All right, just a reminder that Freedom Project Academy's live online school is officially open today for K-12 enrollment. Today, everybody. So request your free packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedom, F-O-R, school.com. And just a quick reminder to please download our new Freedom Project Media app. It's stupendous. You're going to get access to 18 new shows every week, plus our entire library of content. That's a lot of content, folks. So simply search Freedom Project Media in your app store.
And that wraps up this show for Freedom Project. I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. And until next time, stay with Freedom Project Academy, my friends.